In 2006, Pluto died in a conference room. For 76 years, it was the ninth planet. Then, almost overnight, textbooks were wrong, teachers had to change their lesson plans, and millions of people felt like astronomers had murdered a childhood friend. Rude, honestly. But here's the weird part. Pluto wasn't kicked out because it was too small. So what actually killed Pluto? The popular version is that Pluto was just too tiny to hang with the big kids. But that's the bedtime story version. This is really a story about what happens when science discovers too much and an old category breaks. To understand Pluto's reclassification, we need to start with how it was found, why it became a planet, what made it suspiciously weird, and why its fate was sealed before the vote even happened. The story begins with Percival Lowell, who believed there was a hidden world beyond Neptune, Planet X. Lowell died before finding it, but his observatory kept searching. Enter Clyde Tombaugh, a young astronomer with the deeply glamorous job of staring at photographic plates until the universe blinked. He compared images taken on January 23 and January 29, 1930, using a size blink comparator, switching rapidly between them to spot anything moving against the stars. On February 18, he found the dot. The discovery was announced March 13, Lowell's birthday. Then 11-year-old Venetia Burney suggested the name Pluto, after the Roman god of the underworld. So Pluto entered the solar system as a mystery object, found by a young observer, named by a child, and announced on the birthday of the man who dreamed it existed. In 1930, Pluto looked like a planet because astronomers didn't yet know what else to call it. It was distant, it orbited the Sun, and it seemed to occupy the empty frontier beyond Neptune. Pluto became a planet before astronomers knew it had neighbors. Early hopes for Planet X made it seem more important than it physically was, and over time, measurements shrank it. Today, NASA gives Pluto's diameter as about 1,477 miles, or 2,377 kilometers, about 1/5 Earth's width, and roughly 2/3 the diameter of the Moon. Small was part of the weirdness, but small alone was not the crime. And Pluto is very weird. Its year lasts 248 Earth years, which is an excellent excuse for missing deadlines. Its orbit ranges from about 30 to 49.3 astronomical units from the Sun, and it's more stretched out and tilted than the major planets' orbits. From 1979 to 1999, Pluto was actually closer to the Sun than Neptune. Though no, it's not about to crash into Neptune. Their orbital resonance keeps the arrangement stable. Pluto also has 5 known moons: Charon, Nix, Hydra, Kerberos, and Styx. Charon is so large compared with Pluto that people sometimes call them a double planet. Everything about Pluto was weird, but for decades, weird was fine. Weird just meant Pluto was the oddball 9th planet. Pluto's demotion wasn't actually the first time astronomy pulled this trick. Ceres was discovered in 1801 and was initially considered a planet. Then astronomers kept finding more objects in the same region between Mars and Jupiter. Eventually, Ceres stopped looking like a unique planet and started looking like the first known member of a new population, the asteroid belt. Later, it became an asteroid, and in 2006, a dwarf planet. Ceres was not demoted because it vanished. It was demoted because it got siblings. And that is almost exactly what happened to Pluto. Beyond Neptune is a vast region of icy bodies called the Kuiper Belt. For much of the 20th century, Pluto looked lonely out there, like the last house before the cosmic woods. Then, better telescopes and surveys started finding more objects beyond Neptune. Not one, not two, a whole population. Pluto stopped looking like the 9th planet and started looking like the brightest, most famous member of a class. And then astronomers found the object that forced the question no one could politely ignore anymore. Eris was found in data from 2003 and announced in 2005. It was Pluto-sized and more massive than Pluto, which is the sort of discovery that makes classification committees start sweating into their name badges. If Pluto was a planet, should Eris be one too? What about Haumea? Makemake? What about the next icy world waiting in the dark? Did the solar system have 9 planets, 10 planets, 12 planets, or potentially dozens? Eris did not personally kill Pluto, but Eris made it impossible to keep pretending Pluto was alone. The formal decision came from the International Astronomical Union, not NASA. On August 24, 2006, the IAU adopted a definition for planets in our solar system. A planet must orbit the Sun. It must be massive enough for gravity to make it nearly round, and it must have cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Pluto passes the first test. It orbits the Sun. Pluto passes the second test. It's round. But the third test, no. Under the IAU definition, a dwarf planet orbits the Sun, is nearly round, is not a satellite, and has not cleared its neighborhood. So Pluto became a dwarf planet. And yes, confusingly, in IAU usage, a dwarf planet is not a type of planet. Words, humanity's most elegant disaster. Now, cleared the neighborhood does not mean a planet's orbit is perfectly empty. Earth has near-Earth asteroids. Jupiter has Trojan asteroids. The planets are not running spotless orbital homeowners associations. The real idea is gravitational dominance. A major planet has enough influence to absorb, eject, capture, or control many objects in its orbital zone over time. Pluto does not dominate the Kuiper belt that way. It shares its region with many icy trans-Neptunian objects. Pluto did not fail the shape test, it failed the power test. So when people say Pluto was demoted because it was too small, that's not quite right. Size matters indirectly, because more mass helps a world dominate its orbit. But there is no simple IAU rule that says, below this diameter, hand in your planet badge. Pluto's diameter is about 2,377 kilometers, and that was not the official reason. It was demoted because the architecture of the solar system looked different once the Kuiper belt came into view. Pluto wasn't killed because it was small. Pluto was killed because it was no longer unique. And not everyone agrees with the IAU definition. Some planetary scientists prefer a geophysical definition. If a world is round because of its own gravity and has planet-like geology, it can be considered a planet, regardless of whether it cleared its orbit. Astronomical taxonomy often cares about orbital dynamics. Planetary science often cares about what the world itself is like. Geology, atmosphere, internal structure, all the juicy bits. Under that kind of definition, the solar system would have many more planets, including some dwarf planets and maybe large moons. This is why the Pluto debate never fully dies. People are arguing about the word planet, but also about what kind of thing that word is supposed to describe. Here's the irony. Pluto became more fascinating after losing the label. NASA's New Horizons launched on January 19, 2006, before Pluto was reclassified, and flew past it on July 14, 2015. A spacecraft launched to visit the ninth planet arrived at a dwarf planet, and what it found was not a dead ice pebble. Pluto had mountains, glaciers, plains, craters, haze layers, a thin atmosphere, and signs of active or recent geology. Its famous heart-shaped nitrogen glacier, Sputnik Planitia, is about 600 miles, or 1,000 kilometers wide, likely the largest known glacier in the solar system. Recent studies keep making Pluto look less frozen and more alive, with evidence for dynamic surface processes, possible cryovolcanism, and even landslides near Sputnik Planitia. Pluto lost the simplest label it had, and then immediately became a much richer world. And there's one last detail. When New Horizons flew past Pluto, it carried some of Clyde Tombaugh's ashes. The man who found Pluto as a tiny moving speck on photographic plates, in a way, finally reached it. Pluto was not erased. It was reclassified. And the strange thing is, once it stopped being the ninth planet, we finally started seeing it clearly, not as the last planet, but as the first famous world of a much larger frontier.